Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Pocket Theology. Dude, welcome.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so new format. This is our second week in the new format.
Yep.
And I'm not going to lie, it's been a little bit of a stretch for me, like coming in with a topic, like, no, this is what we're staying to.
But I will say, man, the preparation has already made me more excited about the conversations we're going to have.
We talked about that last week too, was like, and I get that. Like for me, it's just that relational side. What I am excited about.
I don't think we missed it though.
No, we didn't.
Because here's the thing, I go back and I edit the podcast and I get to listen through, highlights or pick out stuff.
Lowlights. Lots of lowlights.
Lots of things we're cutting out. and I'll say, man, I'm like, no, we still laugh, we still candor,
that's who we are. Like that, those are not manufactured things.
No,
those
it's
are true
nice.
Who we are. Actually, what I'm really excited about, to be honest, is our guests, getting our guests on.
Yeah, and I'm in conversation with a couple of guys. I won't say who, but we've got some people coming, and even more down the pipeline. Acquaintances of yours, some people you're connected to.
Dude, that's the part I'm most looking forward about. Is I've wanted to have guests on consistently for years. But finding the time, but then also the nuance to do it, because it is a little intimidating when you're like, unless you're a Joe Rogan.
Can you come and be on my podcast?
Hey, buddy, you want to be on a podcast that you want to take time? And the crazy part is, we have people who are driving from hours away to us.
Yeah.
And so even that,
till we take it on the road.
Podcast on Pocket Theology on the road. It's happening. Okay. All right, so we got a topic today.
Yes, we do.
And we were going to do a different topic.
Yeah.
And then this one came up. Okay. Do you want to address it, or should I set it? Should I set it up, or do you want to do the questions? What do you want to do?
You set the tone, and I've got some questions here for us that can push the conversation.
So legitimately, in the last 2 months, I've had several people come and ask me this question. I've only heard it one other time before, and it was last summer talking with some pastors, and this pastor and I kind of went, I wouldn't say toe to toe, but we disagreed.
Yeah.
And let me say, when I say disagree, like we loosely disagreed. But in the last month and a half, 2 months, I've had multiple people ask me this. I'm like, dude, there's something in the water. And so the question is this: does God require that you get married before the state and the church? Can you just have a church wedding and not have the state involved at all? And it's an interesting question. When I was younger, one of my best friends, his parents got legally divorced because financially it was better for them, but stayed married.
Interesting.
And the reason why they did it was purely financial.
Wow. And deeply in love and still,
I guess.
I suppose.
I'm assuming so. I mean, I think they're still together, right?
Right.
It's been decades since I talked to them.
Interesting.
So, but I remember being like,
some people do the opposite. They're like, hey, man.
Well, actually, so this is part of the conversation around this is why?
Yeah.
Why don't you want to be married to the state? And what does it mean to be married? Like, what is marriage as an institution, as something? And so that's the question. Does marriage require both church and the state? Or can you just be married in the eyes of God? And as a Christian, as a pastor, can I say, yes, I'm all for that? So the bigger question is, would I do a marriage personally? Would I marry a couple who is not going to get a marriage license and do those? That's the question that was asked to me. Like, hey, would you do this marriage? And so I'm like, dude, we need to talk about this because we had a great conversation about it last week. All right. So here are the two views.
Okay.
And then I know you got some questions.
Absolutely.
Okay. So view number one is that marriage should be recognized by both church and state.
Okay.
Now, I'll tell you, the Catholic Church definitely holds this view.
Okay.
It's a very strong view. And there are actually some individuals who have been notable supporters of this, at least according to the chats. Chat GPT. I'm not going to lie. I looked it up. I'm curious because Augustine,
okay,
Thomas Aquinas, Martin Luther, John Calvin, John Piper. The fact that Calvin and Piper are in the same sentence is kind of weird to me. Wayne Grudem, Tim Keller, Albert Mohler. Now, let's be clear. A lot of these guys, they all fit within the Reformed camp except for Augustine and Aquinas because that didn't exist yet.
Right.
The second view is that marriage does not require both church and state, to be valid before God. It just needs a covenantal ceremony between two people. And this advocates, there's not necessarily names attached to this, more movements that are attached to it. So like some Anabaptist groups. Anabaptists. So if you're not familiar with Anabaptists are the group who kind of railed against the reformers and didn't believe in infant baptism, anti-Baptist baptism. And so that's a very simplistic view of it.
Yeah.
And in fact, the reformers were notorious for persecuting the Anabaptists, like burning them at the stake, drowning them. Like, it was horrific how the church handled this kind of stuff. Certain free church traditions, so like evangelical free, that kind of stuff, house church movements, and then Christian libertarian thinkers tend to hold to this. Now, that is very overly simplistic. Let's be clear. I'm not... someone can fact check that if they want to, but I don't know that it's worth the time to fact check it.
It seems broad anyway.
I mean, and it's. I think right now the reason why this is becoming such an issue is because there's so many responses to the government.
Yes. Yeah. Makes sense. It's a negative response, would you say?
Yeah, I think there's a distrust of the government right now, which is why should the government be involved on both sides?
Yeah.
So whether you're a conservative Christian or you're a liberal Christian, I think both sides are. There's a lot of distrust and distaste for government authority. All right, brother, hit me with some questions, and let me be clear. These are just my thoughts, right?
Yeah.
I cannot take a biblical stance because the Bible's actually not clear on it.
Sure. Well, I appreciate we've established both sides.
Yeah.
And we're going to have members of the audience that are sitting on either side of this, that it is that state involvement in biblical marriage is very important, and the adverse that it is not.
Yes.
It is not necessary.
And my opinion could change.
Yeah, it could.
My theology has changed so much.
And asking questions is the best thing, and being curious and going to Scripture. So the first one I have here is kind of like a fun timeline question.
Okay.
So it just says, if marriage was instituted by God before the existence of our modern governance, what authority does civil government have to define, alter, and validate marriage?
Okay, this is such an important question from a marriage perspective because if, as Christians, we believe that God was the one who instituted marriage, so government does not get to determine what marriage is, and marriage is supposed to be between a man and a woman. That's instituted biblically. Now, I'll also say this. It's one of the reasons why, one of the reasons why I struggle, and I want to say struggle because, man, I feel it. The reason why I do not hold, and it's not the only, but one of the main reasons why I don't hold an affirming view on homosexuality. Like, I hold to a traditional sexual ethic. And so you have some people like, well, love is love and marriage is about love. Okay. Now that is a very worldly perspective of marriage. And how do I know that? Because a large portion of church history, or not church history, world history, love was not at the center of marriage.
Yeah, it was often transactional.
It was almost always transactional.
Maybe even family-based. It was contractual. Maybe it was even like, what would you say?
Arranged marriages. They were arranged marriages, right? Yeah. And so this whole notion that marriage is supposed to be about love. Now, let's be clear. It is.
Of course.
But in our culture. But most marriage throughout history was not I fell in love with you, let's get married. It was, there was something happening covenantally.
Love is the verb, not as like the feeling.
The feeling. And this is also, there is research to suggest that you are more likely to get divorced if you marry for love than if you marry for contract, which sounds weird, doesn't it? Like,
it does.
Arranged marriages. In other cultures, there's a lower divorce rate.
There is research that would suggest that they're significantly more successful.
Now, let me tell you why I think that is.
Okay.
And I do think there's a reason for it. And I'm not saying that you should just marry for contract. Let's be clear.
We're not bringing back arranged marriage.
No, we're not bringing. Well, and actually, sometimes I wonder if it wouldn't be a bad thing because the number of people.
Interesting.
I know some people are going to like, what is going on, Jason? No. Okay, so let's talk about this. Because there is a perception that you're going to have the feeling of love forever. Right. And think about how many people get divorced and what's one of the number one reasons why people get divorced.
I fell out of love.
That's right.
Yeah.
And if the feeling of love is the reason why you got married,
right,
what the world says was when you don't love that person, when you don't have that feeling of love anymore, then the natural reaction is divorce.
Sure.
And whereas arranged marriages, now again, I'm not arranging any marriages for my kids. It's not our culture, but we have to acknowledge that's how the first arranged marriage was between Adam and Eve. God arranged the marriage.
Wow. Yeah.
Like we don't think about that. We think Adam looked at her and went, "Wow, I'm in love with her." No, that's it. That was the first arranged marriage.
Hey, it's not good that you should be alone here.
He arranged the marriage.
Yeah.
So I actually had a friend. He owned our first townhome that we rented. He had an arranged marriage.
Wow.
And one of the things that he was from India or Pakistan, I don't remember which.
Okay, see now that's like culturally wide there.
It's very culturally
yes.
wide. Actually, in a lot of Eastern cultures,
right?
Africa, parts of the Middle East, Asia.
Yeah.
It's only in Western culture where we've made the feeling of love the primary reason why we get married.
Sure.
Now, let me be clear. Again, let me tell you what I'm not saying. What I'm not saying is let's go back to arranged marriages.
Pocket theology does not endorse
it. But the reason why this conversation matters is because the problem that exists in our current culture today is love is not a commitment. It's committed until I don't feel like being committed anymore. It's like did you know it's easier to get out of a marriage than it is to get out of a Verizon contract?
Wow.
I'm joking. Actually, that might be true. That might be true. But the reason now, here's the thing. What I've talked to individuals that are from those cultures, and here's what I've heard. I grew to love this person.
Sure.
And of course I loved them. And that is so contrary to our Western thinking of, what do you mean you grew to love? Because you can choose to love. And so this brings in a bigger issue. And this goes back to if love is love and that's all that matters. Well, if we're really going to look at the biblical understanding of marriage, marriage is first and foremost not about love. Huh?
I know. It's very contrary.
And it's very contrary. But that doesn't mean love isn't involved.
Correct. It is really, and it's really that switch of perspective of that love as an action and as a choice.
Marriage is about a covenantal choice.
Yeah.
And God makes that covenantal choice because he loves us when he loved us first.
Yeah. Hey, give us a little brief description about this covenantal conversation here.
Again, very 1,000-foot view,
Yep.
10, 20,000, 30,000 foot view. So my biblical theologians are going to kind of cringe at some of this, but
it's all right. We're keeping it
as
high and tight.
Biblical, the idea of covenant is more than a contract.
Okay.
But it is a contract.
Okay.
In the ancient world, you had a covenantal promise between two or more parties. And you typically had somebody who was in the higher position and someone who was in the lower position.
All right.
So big king, little king, person who has something, the person who doesn't have something. And it came with stipulations. If you do this, I'll do this. If you don't do this, here's the consequence of this. Okay, so this is part of contract. Now, where the language of covenant comes in is you have a couple different kinds of covenants. Okay, so you have what's called a conditional covenant, which is if you break this, we're out of the covenant. And if you don't break this, or regardless if you break it, it's a one directional. It's called an unconditional covenant or a unilateral covenant.
Okay.
God makes unilateral covenants with his people and conditional covenants with his people.
Okay.
The new covenant is an unconditional covenant. It's about what God has done for us, and we have to accept that covenant.
The new covenant of Jesus Christ.
That's new covenant.
Okay.
Old covenant was also unconditional, but it came with some conditions.
Sure. People, their minds probably instantly go to like the Ten Commandments.
Yep. And in fact, if you go to like Deuteronomy, it'll say things like, if you don't do this, I'm going to remove you from the land.
Right.
If you don't obey my commands, if you don't do the things I'm telling you to,
thinking about the exile,
here's the consequence. That's right. Here's the consequences, but they were still his people.
Yep.
Okay. Now, why does this matter when we talk about marriage? Well, if marriage is just a contract, then essentially what you do is the minute you don't want to do it, there's no consequence to break it except for maybe financially.
Sure.
And in the Bible, the idea of covenant is rooted in commitment and love. And so it's not that love is placed no place in it, but love in the Bible is a verb.
Yes.
it's not an adjective.
Right.
I mean, well, it's an adverb.
Yeah. There you go.
So now we get into state unions versus covenant.
Right.
And some will argue, well, marriage only belongs to the church. Now, theologically, I believe this.
Sure. It was an instituted by God covenant.
By faith, I acknowledge that.
Right.
Right, because I trust in God's word. But a non-Christian doesn't believe that. They don't agree with that. And so the argument right now is about what is marriage? Who does marriage belong to? Mm-hmm. As Christians, I would say marriage belongs to the Lord. However, we live in a world where that word does not carry the same weight. They don't care where it came from. They don't care. Other cultures had marriages.
Because it is gone beyond a God-centered, God-instituted covenant, and it is turned into a civil agreement and contract.
Yes, but here's the irony, is that people still want to do it in churches, and they still want to make vows before the Lord. And this is where I get, for me, where the language breaks down in marriage, because what has happened is you'll have people who want to stand in front of the Lord, they'll invite the Lord into it, but then they don't want to honor any of the covenantal choices they've made because they had a feeling. And that's why we talked about it at first.
Or because they just don't value that half of the equation.
But they said they did. That's the vow, right? So they're making vows. They're taking vows in vain.
Sure.
And so this is why when we says like, let your yes be yes and your no be no.
What about for those individuals who are not? I mean, because there is a subsection of people who are just getting married. I mean, this is probably actually even, I'd say maybe even a majority, but I don't have anything to back that claim, who are getting married just civilly. I mean, there's no God involved. They're doing it in the courthouse.
So then the language conversation that people want to come and do is then call it a civil union, don't call it marriage.
So you think there's a sort of a ownership of the word marriage
for the Christians, the Christian population, certainly a majority would say yes.
Okay.
Now here's where it's like we need to get out of our semantic arguments, because for them it just means something different. We have to accept that.
Yes.
We can argue over semantics, but we're never going to win the argument.
No.
And so really what I want to do is talk about, what does the Christian do?
Yeah.
Because that's really the conversation. This conversation is not about gay marriage.
Yeah.
This conversation isn't about what do we call it? Should we call it civil union? The question is, does the state need to be involved? And I think that's where the bigger thing needs to come in.
Yeah. So let me get into that next question. And this one's, it's going to get a little long, but it explains it. So when a Christian couple is legally married by the state and not covenantally married before God and a church community, what, if anything, is missing from that marriage?
If they're only married before the Lord.
No. This is only civilly.
Okay.
So
yeah,
and then conversely, take the opposite.
Yep.
If they're only married covenantally in the eyes of God, but not by the state, what is it legitimate or illegitimate?
Okay. So here's the first thing I would say is, if you've not involved God into your marriage as a Christian, you're not married. And biblically, God doesn't recognize it. You've not made a vow before the Lord. You've not brought the Lord into it. And marriage is supposed to have God in the center.
By the traditional biblical ethic.
Let's get rid of the word traditional.
Okay.
No, that is the biblical ethic.
Yes.
Ephesians chapter 5.
Okay.
Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church.
Okay.
That is not no. There's no exception for the Christian. If someone says, I don't want God involved. And so I know couples, this is one of the reasons why, even if I don't, I'm not saying I'm making the right call, but I've done it for a reason. Mm-hmm. There are individuals who I've warned against getting married.
Okay.
And I've said, I really caution you, I don't think you're ready for marriage.
Wow.
But if you do it, and I might be changing my view even as we're talking right now.
Wow.
But if you choose to do it, I'd rather be the one to marry you than to have you go before the state and not do it, because when that thing struggles, I want you to know where to turn to.
Okay.
And so I've had individuals that I knew they were going to get divorced. Now, I'm not saying that was the right call on my part. I'll be honest. I don't know. I'm wrestling with that right now.
Yeah, that's a hard wow.
Because for me, it's like I want to be available, and I wrestled through this.
Well, and at what point is and obviously it's like, trusting God that they would turn to Him and perhaps he would change hearts or whatever you were
Yeah,
concerned
and that's
about.
like I want to be in there to fight for the
does
marriage.
God hold this marriage? And
But so I have really difficult conversations with them where I challenge on it. Now, is that the right call? I don't know. I'm trying to do the most loving and honorable thing, because the truth is what they're going to do is just go to the courthouse or find a pastor who will.
Yeah, I wonder how often like that actually. But the thing is,
I've known several people who.
Well,
were
I
told
know,
not
but
to
it's
get
like,
married.
man, they opted on having you be their premarital, right? And they trusted you as a source of guidance and to, I don't know, man, that's hard.
And so what I've always done is then I'll say, hey, here's the thing, like, I'm giving you some warnings.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're ready.
Yeah.
And so I'll encourage them to delay, because what they'll do is they'll go to the courthouse. Sure. And I want to pastorally be able to walk through them. And unfortunately, almost all of them ended up exactly how I thought they would.
And to the point of the question we're answering, you're saying if they would just go to the courthouse, that is not a marriage.
That's not a marriage, not in God's eyes.
Not in the
No, because you've not involved the Lord.
Okay.
That is a civil union.
So then conversely then, let's say they just get married in the eyes of the Lord and do not go through the process of going through the civil union. On what grounds should the marriage be considered legitimate or illegitimate?
Yeah. So here's, I think I want to get rid of the word legitimate or illegitimate.
Right.
Okay. So here's why. For me, the issue, like the argument biblically for those who would say the state doesn't need to be involved, is that there was no government when God first married. The first marriage covenant was in Genesis chapter 1 and 2.
Yep.
First one. Israel wasn't a nation yet, didn't exist. That's great. If you're on a stranded island, there's no government, that's cool. Here's the bigger issue for me about why I do think Christians should be married by the state. One, I want to ask the question, why? Why are they so opposed to the government being involved?
Right.
And usually what I'll hear, I'm going to say that doesn't pass the sniff test for me.
Okay, sure.
Usually what I hear is, well, because I don't need the government involved in my marriage. We just love each other. And I'm like, great. So you're going to make a covenant. And now when you basically just say, you know what, I don't really feel this anymore. There's no protection or coverage financially. There's no protection. And here's because human beings, we're believing the best in people. And I don't believe in the best in people. I just don't. I'd love to say that because I don't believe the best in myself. Jason, that sounds really negative. No, I just know. I love that the line, I'm prone to wander. Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love, right?
Yeah.
It is so easy to just go, I don't feel this anymore. You know what? I'm not into this anymore.
Mm.
And for people to go, no, but Jason, we love each other. This is why we started off. How does marriage begin? This love is all we're going to need to carry us through is rose-colored glasses. And so Romans chapter 13 tells us to obey governing authorities. The government is giving an affordance that you don't have to.
Mm.
But let's say we do get divorced and we've bought a house. Unless both names are on the house. You're hosed.
Right.
Children. How do we make sure children have protection? Like, for me, the goal of government, and this is what Paul writes in Romans, the role of the government is to protect. It's to make sure that bad things don't happen.
Okay.
Or limit bad things, because bad things will happen. But it's to punish when bad things happen.
So a question comes to my mind. We've said that this marriage was instituted by God, and what I'm hearing, if I were to take what we're saying at face value, is there's a lack of protection in the initial covenant, in like the marriage covenant between God, that there's something that needs to be supplemented in, which is a layer of protection for Christians and their children and their property and their ownership.
If we just go covenant with no government. Now, let's also go back Old Testament, because my brothers and sisters who love to argue there was no government. You know what also existed before government? Anarchy, and people were getting slaughtered because there was no punishment.
Sure.
So let's actually look at the culture where if you broke a covenant, I could kill you. And there was I was the authority.
Sure.
And so we can't just say, well, but before Jesus, before the new covenant, before the Mosaic law, there was no government. Yes, and you know what? If I went out and I murdered and I killed, and so what does God do? He institutes laws. And so even when Jews got married, they actually, one of the arguments is, well, Jews didn't have to get married in front of the government. Yes, they did, because you know who became the government? Israel was the government, and it was not a civil ceremony. You had priests involved who were the governing officials.
Yeah.
Now, I think this is, again, for me, it's about protection, because normally, here's why the sniff test doesn't. I think most time when people want to do it, it's because just truthfully, they want to have sex.
Okay.
They want to biblically have the reason to have sex and not feel guilty about it. Because why, if you really love somebody, okay, let's use the love argument. If you really love somebody, why are you afraid to have the government involved? Because the government, well, my taxes. Oh, so now money is the motivator.
Sure.
Well, wait a second. You can't serve two masters. So now you're putting money. Well, I'm just being a good steward of your money. Or you're choosing money over actually protecting your spouse or the other person. It's the same reason like prenups. Like someone said, are prenups biblical? I don't know if they're biblical or not, but here's the reason why you get a prenup, because you don't expect the marriage to work. That's the reason why you get a prenup.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, pretty
It's
much.
when this fails.
When this fails, I still want my butt covered.
That's right. That's the purpose of it. Well, Jason, I'm really wealthy. Well, here's the deal. If you've married for covenant, not for feeling, then you don't need a prenup, because you're like, what's mine is yours. And if this doesn't work, you know what? There's a cost to that, because divorce is supposed to be painful, not just emotionally. Divorce is supposed to cost you something, because divorce sucks. God hates divorce for a reason. He does not hate divorcees.
Yeah.
But I think about the number of people I know who are going through divorces right now, and it's not just painful, but imagine if there was no financial protections and they get divorced. Well, we're divorced. Well, we've moved on. There's a reason why divorce is painful, is because it is not just an emotional thing. You are fusing every aspect of your life together.
Yeah.
And so the argument I would make, and again, I could change my mind on this, but as of right now, I'm not. Because the argument that I see for most people who want to leave the government out of it is, one, they don't trust the government. Well, we shouldn't trust the government. It's man-made. We should never, I don't care if it's a Christian government. You should never trust the government, because human beings are at the center of government. But God himself, now remember, Paul wrote this in Romans 13 under the Roman Empire, during Emperor Nero.
That goes well.
Who was an absolute nut job. And what does he say? Check it out. Romans 13. Let everyone subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers hold no terror for those who do right, but for those who do wrong. Do you want to be free from the fear of the one in authority? Then do what is right, and you will be commended. For the one in authority is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for rulers do not bear the sword for no reason. They are God's servants, agents of wrath, to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. Therefore, it is necessary to submit to the authorities, not only because of possible punishment, but also as a matter of conscience. Now listen to this next verse. This is also why it says why you pay taxes. For the authorities are God's servants who give their full time to governing. Give to everyone what you owe them. If you owe taxes, pay taxes. If revenue, then revenue. If respect, then respect. If honor, then honor. And so what is Paul literally saying there? He's like, here's the deal. If I truly love you and I'm committed to our marriage, I can absolutely have the government involved.
Sure.
All it does is brings protections. And let's say I die. Dude, if your will's not clear and you die, your spouse, if you're not legally married, they get nothing. And so there's a protective nature behind it.
Yeah.
And so for me, am I going to say that it's 100% always wrong? So here is the example that was given to me. So Jason, let's say we have two 85-year-olds, 90-year-olds. They've been widowed. They love Jesus. They really care about each other. And they just want to spend the last days of their life together as husband and wife. However, if they get legally married, and this was posed to me, their inheritance, the money they want to leave for their kids, is going to get jacked up.
Sure.
And they're doing it for the protection of their kids, not the protection of themselves, because they're not going to be around much longer.
Sure.
Right? They're like in their 90s. They're not far, unless they're those weird people who lived to 117 or whatever. But most people, they've maybe got a few years left. So the question is, would you marry them? Well, obviously, I don't think they're doing it for sex. They might be. Let's just be practical. They could be. But I think they're saying, no, we love each other. We're end of our life, but we don't want to harm our kids. Would I consider doing it then? Yes, I'd consider it, because I think we always have to have nuance to stuff.
Right.
But when I meet 20-somethings, Jason, we want to do a covenantal ceremony between us and the Lord, but we don't want the government involved. Why? I'll push them, and I have had this conversation. Oh, okay, so why is it? Well, we know that we can't have sex outside of marriage.
Does it really boil down to that?
Often.
Really? It just seems like a...
I'm not saying always.
No, I know, but it's just like, man, that wouldn't strike me, I guess is...
That's usually because they want to honor the Lord, and they're like, well, but we don't want the government involved.
Which is, I mean, a noble pursuit, if not, like you're saying, kind of, I don't know.
And let's be clear, if we were like under a horrific regime where, prima nocta was a thing, then yeah, I don't want the government involved because I don't want my wife to be taken advantage of by some twisted ruler, right? I watched Braveheart. But that's not what we live in. So I have to ask the question is, what's the purpose of that? But there's always nuances. And so can I say that it is wrong? Well, I think this comes down to a matter of conscience. And so for me, like, I want to get at why.
Yeah.
And some it's like, well, I don't want the government. We're going to lose more money. But did you know the government actually gives more affording? This is actually why the gay rights movement fought so hard for marriage. Because health benefits.
Sure.
I mean, you want to change an entire system. Like the only way that your family's a spouse can be on health benefits is they have to be contractually married.
Sure.
Inheritance taxes, property values, kids.
There are generally government affordances in a marriage.
Yes, because marriage is good for the government, which is why, and this needs to be called out right now. There's so much distrust for the religious side of marriage, not the governmental side of marriage, that more and more people are choosing not to get married at all and just live together and cohabitate.
Sure. But then that doesn't have either.
And these are Christians.
And I actually I went down this rabbit hole because we were talking about this sort of stuff. I wondered about like that, the whole like, oh, you live together for 7 years, you're considered civilly married. That's only like 3 states that operate that way.
And statistically, you're more likely to get divorced if you do that.
Sure.
Because there's no, and I've watched it in real time as couples.
I just think it's a really interesting premise it's just like, hey, we as the government recognize that you've declared that you live together for this amount of time. Boom.
Yeah.
You're married.
And only 3 states. I've not done the research.
Iowa's one of them.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
But then the problem, what about the other 47 states? Yeah. But then again, let's get back to the heart issue.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want my wife to be taken care of.
Yeah.
Well, then get all your affairs in order. That's cool. But do you know how often people die when they're not ready?
Sure.
And let's also get to the other side of it, which is, dude, Christians get divorced too. There's a promise that I've been making every couple, and it's a promise that I'll hold to. I have never watched as 2 people, husband and wife, who if both are pursuing Jesus and loving Jesus, I've never watched their marriage implode. And it's like a triangle. If the husband and wife are on each side of the triangle and Jesus is at the top, the closer they go to love Jesus, the closer they draw together. Where I've watched marriages fall is where one says, I love Jesus, and the other one doesn't. And what you get is eventually a drift, and that person's going here, and this person wants nothing to do with Jesus, or both do.
Caitlin and I, we tied knots at our marriage, 3-cord strand, tying it to that scripture. And the premise is the tighter we tie onto God, the tighter we're tying in together.
And that's the biblical covenant. And so when we talk about covenantal language, again, and I say this whenever I do weddings now, marriage is not about love, the feeling of love.
Right.
It's the commitment of love.
Yeah.
And so God's covenantal love, that's a key word in here, God brings in covenantal love and faithfulness. What I mean by this, and I don't want people to misunderstand, of course there's love in marriage, but when love is only a feeling, God's covenantal love is not about his strong feelings for us. It's his commitment to us. It is his faithfulness to us, his patience with us, his long suffering, which is the better word for patience. And so the question, again, I'm always going to come back to is why? Why are you pushing against this? And just to be honest, most of the time it's, well, we want to get married and we don't want to wait. We love each other and we're trying to honor God. Why do we say we want to honor God? What's the, come on, let's be honest. What's the underlying tension there? We want to honor God so that we want to get married. We want to be able to have sex.
I think more accurate is just we don't want to, they want to obey him. They don't want to.
About what though?
About that. I guess. I don't know.
Let's be clear. The only difference in relationship between any individual.
Well, and then they say don't cohabitate or things like that.
Well, but cohabitation is if they want to cohabitate,
Sure.
What are they planning on doing?
Sure.
Right. And so this is the dilemma that I run into. And I'm 100% making a judgment call. I know I am. And when somebody says, Jason,
I think there's a part of me that's trying to like soften the blow a little bit because, well, it's just
I'm just being real.
I know you are, and it is truly one of the biggest conversations that's taking place, I'm sure, across churches. Is like
the number of Christians right now, people who say they love Jesus who are cohabitating, and I'll ask the question, so are you having sex?
Yeah.
I've yet to hear one goes, no, we're just living together.
Right.
And so why are you doing it? Why are you living? Well, we wanted a trial run to see if this would work. And statistically, here's what the statistics show us. You are more likely to get divorced if you cohabitate than if you don't. You are more likely to get divorced if you don't wait before.
Be interesting to know why.
So I have thoughts.
Okay.
That's all I have.
And then let's hear those, and then we'll kind of sum it up and wrap up for the day.
So here's why I think we see that is that marriage is a spiritual activity.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a contractual activity. And the minute you make a covenant together, something shifts in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people, nowhere in the Bible does it explicitly say this: do not have sex with somebody you're not married to. It doesn't say that.
Mm-hmm.
It alludes to it over and over again by this language of covenant.
Right.
And so people, if they want just a black and white statement, it's not in there because it was assumed that it was supposed to be that way. And anytime you see sexual relationships outside of the covenant of marriage, it's never in good light.
I was going to say those statements I think are a little bit more easy to find.
Oh, and in fact, what you'll see them is they're always messed up and broken.
Yeah.
There's never are you seeing them are like, yeah, that was a good thing. No. And this is why I don't like the language of biblical marriage, because what biblical marriage are we referring to? There's lots of marriages in the Bible. Most of them are bad.
Doesn't go too great.
No, it doesn't. And they're usually because sin comes in. And again, that's the whole reason why I personally I think you have to have the state involved as much as possible, but not state run. Marriage should not be state run.
Right.
Because this is the God piece that we always put God at the center of it. Now, could my opinion be changed? Yes. But human nature and what I believe about people, because I believe this about myself, is that because we're broken and flawed, I'd love to think that we're always going to make the best decisions. And so I wonder, I think the reason, and I've watched this happen numerous times in marriage, Jade.
Mm-hmm.
I've watched this couples who literally, they live together, they do all the things, they buy a house together, and their relationship is great. They get married, and all of a sudden there's tension. And I'll tell you what I think it is. Because now they just can't leave when they want to.
So you're saying that added layer of responsibility or commitment actually creates more friction than less?
If they're not, it can, unless you're actually truly doing this out of covenantal love.
Sure.
Because some people want the freedom. The minute you add that layer of accountability, I'm out of here. I don't like that. And I've watched it it's proved out for couples. I've watched not every couple, let's be clear. And I know couples that have lived together beforehand who are thriving and love Jesus. And this is also why I encourage people like, hey, if you didn't start off right, just apologize. Say, God, we didn't do this right. God redeems. So this is not legalism, but
it's continuously putting the trust in him. I mean, always putting more and more stock in God.
Because he wants you to flourish.
Yes.
And so when he tells you to do something, he's not doing it just as a suggestion.
And dude, okay, I know we're running out of time here, but so many more questions flood to my mind kind of about the topic of separation and divorce. And maybe this is
let's have a divorce conversation.
Maybe this will be a conversation another time. But hey, just to sum it up for us, I know you can't in like the most like black and white sense. But
well, I'm going to leave a little bit of room for you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So one, do I believe that you can get married without the government and still be God honoring? Wrong question.
Okay.
The real question is, why do you want to get married without the government and still be God honoring? That's the real question for me. And if somebody says, well, I don't trust the government, and then I start going down, it comes down to money. But then I'm going to ask, well, do you love your spouse enough to protect them? Because the government is set up in such a way, the best way to protect your spouse is to be married in the eyes of the government and in the eyes of the Lord. You will not have a Christian marriage if Jesus is not in your marriage, period. So going to the state house, unless you've invited Jesus into it, you have now made a civil union. You can call it marriage, you call it whatever you want, but it's like putting lipstick on a pig. It's not marriage in God's economy.
Yeah.
And so this is why I've seen some couples, and I'm actually okay with this. They'll go get married at the courthouse, but then they'll have a religious ceremony.
Okay.
Later.
What's wrong with that?
Nothing.
Yeah.
I have no problem with
and
that.
I've even seen it in reverse,
That's
too.
right. I've seen it both where they're recognizing and you know what they say is, I want to protect. The question is, marriage is supposed to be protective in nature. Now, before civil rights and protection of spouses and that kind of stuff, marriage was the only protection. Well, that's getting married in the state.
Sure.
And so for me, like, I want to protect my family at all costs possible.
Yep.
And so when I meet somebody who's asking the question, dude, in a perfect world where I believed that sin wasn't going to affect relationships, then sure, don't have the state involved. But I've seen it too often. And so that's my hesitancy and my pushback. Could my mind be changed? Sure. This isn't a hill I'm going to die on, but this is why I take the positions that I do. And there are a bunch of other scriptures we could go to on both sides. On both sides.
Yeah, more questions. Yeah, there's scripture that comes to my mind, almost like steel manning.
Well, I want to steel man both arguments.
I do. And it's just the deeper you can dive into it. And here's what I always say.
Always.
Here's what I like to say.
I always say.
No, you're right. Using those sorts of words is not helpful. I really want it to lead people to the scripture that they're pulling this theology from, these ideas from. Have they really taken the time to digest what God's words has to say, or is it feeling? Is it something they caught maybe?
And as Christians, I'm not going to hold a non-Christian to this view,
right?
Because they don't hold the same biblical standard, and so I'd be foolish to do that. The other thing I want to be clear is we need to remove the stigma of shame when somebody, if they didn't do it the right way, dude.
Yeah.
None of us do things the right way.
Of course.
And so what we're pointing to is the challenge of, no, there's a reason why God put this. I know pastors who will not marry people if they're cohabitating.
Hard lines.
Hard line. Absolutely. I will not do it until you move out. I don't hold that line because what I want to be is I want to be pastoral as much as possible, but to move them towards a God honoring.
You recognize where the limitations of that pursuit are. You want to help lead them towards a reconciliation with God and with each other, whatever that might take.
Because they're going to do it regardless.
And you want to help move them forward. That's pastoral.
And I could be wrong. I like the pastors. Yeah. These are well-respected men that I trust who are like, Jason, I won't do it, and here's why.
Yep.
And I'm like, I fully respect that. My conscience has said, how do I be pastoral in that moment? Because what they'll just do is they'll just go to the city government. Now, the argument could be, and we'll end with this, well, then they didn't get married in the eyes of the Lord, and so God's not honoring their marriage to begin with.
Right.
But I want them to be at church. I want them to have community. Now, a lot of times they choose not to.
Yeah, because that's a piece we didn't even really get into, was that community is involved in the marriage covenant.
Yeah.
Anyway. But hey, if you enjoyed this conversation, always feel free to reach out to us on our socials or at our email platform. We'll have those things down in the description. If this conversation intrigued you and you want to hear more,
or disagreed with it,
maybe you're like,
Jason's wrong, and I'm okay with that.
I actually really do want to encourage that too. We want to hear all of your feedback. You don't need to you don't need to flower us up. We're here to have conversation, and we want to have conversation with you. So reach out to us. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week.
Peace.